going to get started. I'd like to introduce and most importantly thank David Crane, very important member of our community who's volunteered his time tonight to serve as moderator for this event tonight. Thank you to both Stephanie and Corey for their service and for agreeing to participate tonight and giving up an hour of their time to do this. With that, I will turn it over to David. This will be recorded and posted on the district's YouTube channel, so for anybody that's not able to be here tonight, it will be posted as soon as possible on the district's website. So with that, I'll turn it over to David. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Glad to clarify that. Welcome to everyone. We're very happy that you turned out tonight to meet the candidates tonight and appreciate your interest in public and civic affairs. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background here. It should be noted that the district office received over 50 questions that were not shared beyond the district office. I have questions here. It should be noted also that the questions that were duplicated or directed toward one specific candidate were omitted. In most cases, at least one question was taken from each person that submitted questions. So that's how it worked. I have not seen these questions. I'm going to be opening up right now. I have them and I'll be reading them. They'll be new to me too. Let me tell you a little bit about the format. I'm going to ask each candidate to introduce themselves and why they are running for the position on the school board. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes. Through a coin toss, Corey won, so he will go first, then Stephanie. I will then proceed with questions that were sent into the district. Again, each candidate will have 2 minutes. And then finally, when all the questions have been asked, candidates will be allowed an opportunity to talk about closing remarks. If they so choose to do so, they will get 2 minutes for that. So, with that said, I'm going to ask Corey, will you please do your opening remarks?
Yes. Hi. I'd like to first thank everyone who came here tonight, everyone who organized the event, Mr. Crum. Especially like to thank the faculty and staff of Hamilton Central, especially because it's Teacher Appreciation Day. And finally, I'd like to thank our current board and Ms. Fidel for the service that they've given to the district. It's not a glamorous job, and it's easy for others to level accusations from afar, so I'm glad they care enough about the public education to serve. To introduce myself, I've been an educator for the last 12 years, and before that I was a student. So I guess my entire life I've been going to school. My own area of specialization is in Spanish and Portuguese, and I'm currently the director of the Language Center at Colgate. In that capacity, I have both administrative and teaching duties. The position has also given me the chance to get involved here at HCS. I lead 2 Colgate student volunteer groups for teaching and tutoring in foreign languages. And I am also currently a volunteer ASO coach for the under-6 team, where the players know me better as Mr. Peanut Butter. And last year, I was a member of the Strategic Plan Core Team and the Technology Task Force, and that experience is what brings me here today. I'm running for the Board of Education because I believe the board and the community can better complement the work of teachers and administrators by fully implementing the strategic plan. A lot of effort was put into that plan by a large group of teachers, administrators, and community members. We met several times and went over a wide variety of issues, and not everything that was deliberated is reflected in the final document. I believe that my work as a member of the team gives me a perspective that will help the board make the implementation more efficient and more effective. And finally, as we enter into the search for a superintendent, I want to ensure the highest possible level of transparency. I'd like to see robust input from teachers, students, and the community as we seek a leader for the district. The strife and division in our district is harmful to our community, and more important, is harmful to our children's learning. We need a new superintendent who can work closely with the board and unite us and remind us, as the mission statement in our new strategic plan says, to educate every student every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Stephanie.
Thank you.
So I too would like to thank the people who organized this, especially Debbie Curley, who put a lot of time and effort into this. I'd like to thank David for moderating and Corey for your willingness to run. My name is Stephanie Fadale. I'm a parent, taxpayer, a self-employed business development specialist in the field of healthcare. I'm a strong advocate that all children, regardless of barriers of ability or economic status, have the right to learn in a way that will allow them to compete in a global environment grown from the roots of an exceptional education in a rural setting. I am driven by a sense of service to my community. I currently serve on 4 different nonprofit and foundation boards, and I am the current president of the Board of Ed here at Hamilton Central. In my spare time, I volunteer my time with Boy Scouts, Special Olympics, my church, the Rotary, and various other organizations. No usually is not in my vocabulary, as my husband Sean, who I've been married to for close to 24 years, and 2 kids who are current HCS students, Colin and GT, can currently attest to. In the previous 2 school districts where I have resided, I have been involved in Board of Education committees and in a strategic planning process. This experience has readied me for this role in Hamilton, where I've been elected 2 times for this position, each time reinforcing me the importance of this work. I am respectful of the obligations and duties and responsibilities of this role, and I continue to learn and grow. If you ask people who know me, I am generally described as friendly and outgoing, honest and loyal, and I am driven by a sense of integrity. I have a strong sense of duty to pour myself into any job, paying or not, and want to do the best I can for all constituents. I love this school district. My children have had a wonderful education here, empowered by administrators, teachers, and staff who love them like their own. I want to continue that for those coming next, and to that end, I'm here asking for your support to re-elect me to the Board of Education. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now get to the first question, and that will go to you, Corey. In your mind, what are the top 2 priorities the board should be working on in this coming year?
Well, the top priority, which is mandated by the board, is finding a new superintendent. That is a duty that I think is clear that needs to be done with a lot of community support, and a lot of community feedback, hearing from teachers, hearing from students, hearing from everybody involved. I've had the chance to serve on several academic job searches in the past, so I know the importance of reading over applications carefully and finding the person that's going to fit within the current structure of the organization that we have. I think the second most important thing is making sure that the strategic plan gets implemented fully. We have an implementation team that's begun. I'd like to see clear direction from the board. I believe it was suggested by the outgoing superintendent that a board member participate in that implementation team, and I think that's something important. I think having somebody who is involved in the board be right there as part of that process is clearly important. What that strategic plan will do more than anything is provide structure and provide systemic support for the things that are going on in school, making sure that everything that happens for a reason, that there's always policies that we can rely on to know what direction we should be going, so that we're always finding ourselves in the right direction, which is improving the education for our students.
Thank you, Corey. Stephanie?
Thank you.
I too feel those are the priorities for the next coming school year. The superintendent search is critical to the success of our school district. I believe everyone should have a role and a voice, and I believe all hands are on deck for this. This is a huge opportunity for our school district to really take advantage of choosing the next leader of our district. To be clear, I believe that we should be using the BOCES district superintendent to be conducting the search. It's fiscally responsible. And as I learned in the March 1st public workshop, it's one of the duties of the district superintendent who's at BOCES. The workshop that was run by our district's attorney said that exploring all options should be exercised, but nothing should be set in stone, and the options should all be laid out on the table. But I just want to put that out there, that I strongly believe that we should be using the BOCES. The second initiative that I believe, as Corey mentioned, is the strategic plan. This is a great document. This is a living, breathing document that we need to prioritize. All of the initiatives and the the structure of the plan are realistic, dynamic, but not tethered to any particular leadership or any particular board member. We need to be financially responsible and have those goals to be able to be measured. And the board does need to be in lockstep with this plan because it should run parallel to setting goals and setting measurable metrics with which to measure it by. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, we'll move to question 2. Corey, we'll start. What are the most important qualities will you seek in superintendent candidates to ensure long-term success, and how will you involve the community, students, and teachers in the superintendent search to get everyone's input on the skills needed in the candidate?
Based on my experience in conducting academic job searches, I think the most important thing first and foremost is to set this criteria that we will use to find the right candidate. And I think we should set that criteria by soliciting feedback from the community, from teachers, from students. I also think it has been expressed by some teachers and some community members, they don't feel comfortable coming forward and doing this kind of feedback publicly. So setting up a system where they can provide anonymous feedback in this search will be also important, so that we can get real feedback from people and know what they want. So I'm very open to listening first to what people want and hearing what they have to say, and then setting criteria, clear criteria that we have. Now, some of the things I think we can all agree on and that we know that this new superintendent will have to tackle are issues. We want somebody who has unique ideas moving forward, specifically things like low enrollment. How are they going to tackle this issue? How are they going to help us deal with the issues involved in low enrollment? I need somebody, we need a superintendent that has a philosophical belief in public education, that knows the value of public education and can defend against the several attacks going on nationally against the idea of public education. And we need somebody who can communicate well with teachers in the community and help resolve some of the tensions, some of the seeming divisions that happen in our school, because those divisions, more than anything, fuel this attack on public education and prevent it from moving forward and improving. And finally, I think we need somebody who can read and understand the strategic plan. I think that should be part of the interview process, that they've read over the strategic plan, they understand it, and they know what they would do, and they have a clear plan moving forward, how they would implement that, how they would ensure that all of that is implemented correctly.
Thank you, Corey. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you. I believe that the ideal candidate for the next superintendent, the #1 priority on his agenda is student achievement. And I believe that a highly experienced person should be in this role due to, as Corey mentioned, some of the nuances of our school district that really are unique to Hamilton. I believe we need a highly effective communicator who values relationships and a style that is a servant style that manages conflict effectively and understands the balance of those relationships in that conflict resolution. We need a collaborator who understands relationships between stakeholders and non-stakeholders in our community and seeks to learn about all of our constituents. I would like to see a person who's responsive and sensitive to information and historical perspective, yet they're responsible and decisive in action. I believe we need someone who's highly accountable, who understands that clear agreements work both ways. And it's interesting, I received the onboard newsletter this week, and the title was, what a superintendent candidate would look for in a board of education. And one of those things is tenure and continuity on the board. I believe that there should be feedback and information from the public and teachers and staff who will help to create the description of our district and help form sort of the blueprint for us. And like I said, all hands are on deck for this. We need to do this collaboratively for this to work and to attract the best candidate that we can.
Thank you, Stephanie. Question number 3. As stated by the Board of Ed's policy, Each board meeting is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. Over the past year, multiple community members have urged the board to hold additional meetings that are public. In other words, meetings in which there can be dialogue between board members and members of the community. If elected, how will you respond to these requests? Or
I think that's a huge issue, and I think that almost certainly that the board needs to take steps immediately to get that clear and meaningful dialogue with people in the community. I think we know, I've seen that the board has a committee meetings with the HTA, and I think that's great and that's wonderful. I'd like to see something similar with the PTO, and saying that the parent-teacher organization has a voice and they can ask questions and get clear feedback from a member of the board. I think there's a lot of ways that we can get this kind of feedback. Part of the issue, of course, is that the public's not always interested in coming to board meetings. I don't know why they wouldn't want to listen to us, listen to people approve cafeteria budgets all the time. But, so finding ways, I think we have to reach out, and the board needs to be proactive in its communication with people, proactive in going to meet with the Hamilton Business Association. We have a lot of business leaders in our community who pay taxes but don't necessarily live in the community. And we need to make sure that they feel like they're being heard and that they know the great things that are happening here at our school, so that they feel the benefits from education. Once they reap the benefits of the education that happens here in this school. And they need to know that, and they need to feel that that's what's happening here in the school.
thank you, Corey. Stephanie.
Thank you.
Those are great ideas. I mean, we should be doing a better job of engaging our public. You know, when I ran for the board for the first time, I was totally unprepared for the regulations regarding information and dialogue that you were permitted and expected to create with your public. You know, and it's really difficult work to navigate, and I struggle, and I'm striving to be as transparent as possible. The board does hold workshops, and we held a public workshop on March 1st, and not one person from the public was there. We have policies that we review on a constant basis, whether those are dictated to us by BOCES policy, labor relations, or policy department at BOCES. And we look for opportunities all the time in order to have that dialogue with the public. Budget coffees this year were extremely low attended. The one that I attended was attended by 4 of our board members and not one other member from the public. I think the opportunities are there. Sorry? Well, the one I was attending. So I think that the opportunities are there. It's again, like Corey said, they're not exciting meetings. we need to do a better job of engaging our public, and so I appreciate that, and I agree with you. You know, the challenge is, how do you effectively communicate with people? There's multiple avenues for the public to reach out to the board. The board has been responsive. We began last February, we had a communications workshop where we had sort of a close the loop section added to our agenda where people were asking the board questions. We came back the next meeting and closed the loop. So are we doing a great job of it? No. But can we do better? Absolutely. And that's what I hope to do in the next term.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, we're on to question 4. How do you operate in a digital age where people feel they have access to everything? In other words, how do you protect our students' privacy, teachers' personnel records, administrators' personnel records, etc.? You are privy to a lot of information and take on a huge responsibility. How do you think transparency works given these factors? Corey?
That is a huge issue. We know that there's so much information, and we've had here at the district a lot of turnover in terms of our technology administrator, and I think we need to take proactive steps in securing data from any kind of intrusion, any kind of leaking. As far as board members go, it's also, of course, as Stephanie said, difficult to balance that idea of how much can you share and what can you be transparent, what can you be clear about. I think when people in this community talk about transparency, they don't necessarily always need to know the specifics of why somebody is hired, why somebody is fired, but what they want to know is what are the policies that the board has in place? What are the policies that the board wants out of their administrators? What are the ways that the board sees that this school district can move forward, and how are they going to find the people who are going to do that? And I think those are things that we can always talk about. So there are lots of things that the board can't talk about, but there's so much that the board can be very clear about and be very upfront about. And I think whenever somebody's under attack, there's a natural position that is defensive. And I understand that can be difficult, and you kind of want to move into a shell. And it's a natural human tendency that we need to fight against. And I think being open and being vulnerable and allowing to admit when mistakes have been made or problems have been dealt with poorly is key to being a good board member.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Stephanie?
Thank you. As you mentioned, the digital age, I think that's an interesting way of putting it. More and more our lives are not just our lives. There are a series of clicks and likes and how many retweets and timed Snapchats that, if really left untethered, are not helping us to focus on what's important, which is our kids. The board has a challenge, and I can assure you, in what I bring to this is I have maintained confidentiality. I abide by the oath that I took when I began this journey. I think it's important. I think it's completely it's critical for the board to be able to maintain the confidentiality of the information it has. As far as protecting the privacy and the data of our administrators, our school children, of our district, that is what we depend on our technology director for. We have good people in place. We are putting good infrastructure in place. We just spent a lot of money to upgrade our infrastructure, and hopefully that is going to make a more robust security for us. I agree with Corey that the board does need to have a digital footprint, and we do. And so it's always a challenge, but I look forward to the opportunity to continue to grow and learn and find ways to be more transparent in a digital age that doesn't compromise principle, it doesn't compromise integrity, and it sets good examples for our children, because we don't want our children to have pressures of social media, so we as parents in the community need to set good examples and not engage in bad behavior as well on social media. And so that's my stand on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, on to question 5, excuse me. To represent the needs of the school and the community, it is sometimes necessary to take an action that is not popular with the people in attendance at the board meeting based on information that is only available to the board. How would you address this issue when it arises? Corey?
I think the board does, of course, have to make tough decisions. I think we're coming out of a time when the financial situation in our country has been dire, and our board went through that time of making really unpopular, hard decisions. I think, luckily, it looks like we're moving out of that, we're moving away from that, and we're moving to a time of more, maybe less pressure in that regard. So I think it's an important time that we implement policies that are clear, that we have systems in place, so that when there are controversial issues coming up, that we can look back and say, look, this is the protocol we followed. You might not understand what we did, and there might be information we don't have, but it's clear that we set out beforehand the ways we're going to go about things. And that this isn't a process that is opaque, this is a process that we put into place. And I think that's what the strategic plan does. It provides very clear outlines for how we'll go about doing things in a systematic way. So a way that's devoid of maybe pettiness or any kind of personality issues, and it's more focused on the results that we want, the goals that we want to achieve, And again, always going back to the idea of what is best for our children? What's going to improve education at the school? How can we make sure that our children are getting the best education possible? And I think as we keep that in mind, as we keep that goal in mind, and we look farther down the road than right in front of us, then those little things and those little discrepancies kind of fade away. As we know that we're all working toward a common goal, then we can support each other and we can find more unity and an ability to help each other out, even in times that are difficult or times where we don't understand why people are making the decisions that they have to make.
Okay, thank you, Cory. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you. So decisions that have to be made that are difficult are part of this job. This is a complex position that you're in. You have to balance your constituents with what's best for the district, and somebody in that puzzle is not going to agree with what you decide. Allowing groups to build consensus after you think about the issues and you debate them civilly, with civility, helps you arrive at those decisions. And sometimes those decisions are not popular. And that is the nature of this job. This is what you sign up for. My style of trying to build that consensus is I listen for understanding. I acknowledge that there's frustration on each of the sides. I listen to both sides. I try to encourage the dialogue and flex to styles, and I give space. So I understand that the disagreements are going to be there. We can agree to disagree, but that doesn't constitute fighting with one another. There's a children's author named Max Lucado, and he says, and I wrote it down because I just love this statement, you cannot avoid conflict, but you can control combat. And that is important. And that is what guides me. There is no reason to fight about things. We need to act as good models for our children in the decision-making process and teach them to manage conflict. In the end, when you're trying to make a decision that you know is not going to be popular, especially as a board member, what has always guided me is that I take the information, both confidential and public, I weigh it heavily, and I vote for what I believe is in the best interest of the district, and that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. On to question 6. Given all the evidence-based controversy over the past several years, why should or shouldn't we vote to keep the same board in place? Cory?
I feel like we might have different answers on this one. I think that when we think about the controversies and the conflicts that have been part of this process over the last year, I think that we need a time to heal. We need some way to look past the problems that have happened and find common ground, find the places where we agree, find the ways that we can work together. When I was part of the strategic plan, I saw a group of people. It wasn't teachers and parents and community members sitting apart, not working together. It was people working together. I love the experience of working on the technology platform and working with Terry Monty. Now, I'm very technology focused in my career, and I know a lot about technology. But Terry Monty was teaching me things about the school and about what the teachers at the school need. She had a wealth of knowledge, and I think complementing those things really worked well, and I think it produced some good goals and some good desired outcomes for our plan moving forward with technology. So I think the more opportunity we have to work together, the less that we can see that we're doing something separate, that we have different intentions. So in all of those conflicts, I think it's a time for our community to heal. It's a time for our community to put aside the past, say the past is in the past, and what can we do moving forward? And how can we come up with common goals moving forward? How can we decide what is the thing that we want in our community? What do we want our school to look like? I think that will help us come together and forget some of the things that have made us all so mad and upset in the last year.
Thank you, Cory. Stephanie?
So quite honestly, I don't have a lot to add to that because that is perfect. our school needs to heal. I value the culture of our school. I value its teachers and their satisfaction with coming to school every day. I value our students, that they're happy, and they're happy entering and they're happy exiting the building. And I believe that culture is everyone's responsibility. It is not just the leader of the school, it is not just a student that comes to school, it is not just the Board of Education, it's also the community. And so I am hopeful that in this next year, we can look towards the healing process to begin to rebuild the culture and create the happy place that we all know is Hamilton Central and we can be proud of.
Thank you, Stephanie. On to question 7. There seems to be mounting tensions within the community, especially at board meetings over many issues. And yet, it seems like no one is talking to each other, coming to the table to truly listen to one another with respect, open minds, and empathy. So much so that I have heard many people call the environment at Hamilton Central toxic. Will you, as a board member, be involved in relieving these tensions? And if yes, how do you propose to start? Great.
Well, one of the things that motivated me to run for the board was being in a board meeting and seeing one of the great students here at Hamilton Central get up and tell the board that she was confused and she didn't know what was going on. And that, knowing that that's affecting the students, that's what really gets me. Now, if there's petty differences between parents, and teachers and things that personality conflicts, that's bad. But when it affects the students, then something needs to change. And I think that we need to make sure that we are not letting any conflicts we have filter into the role of students. So I think, as we've just said, respectful dialogue, open dialogue, where opinions matter. And also evidence-based change. When we're gonna look for ways that the board can change, it should be based in evidence. And I think that's what the strategic plan does. Again, it looked at evidence. We as a group looked at a lot of evidence to come to the conclusions that we had. And I think that helped us go away from, well, what do we want, to what do we need? What does this school need? Not what individuals thought, but what the people saw in the evidence that we had. And I think taking that approach makes the whole process more civil. It makes it more accountable to the facts that we have before us, and it makes it a much better environment for our students.
Thank you, Greg. Stephanie.
Yes, as I said in the beginning, I value relationships because I believe that relationships drive results. When you put stock and value someone as a person, it makes a difference. And as a board member, it is painful to me when people don't value those relationships and they use petty arguments and they don't behave in a civil manner. We are going to disagree. All of us are going to disagree about things. But that is the good part of our democracy. That is what makes our country work well and has for hundreds of years. I was so happy to see part of the strategic plan initiative, and this is thanks to Corey and that team, that addresses morale as one of the strategic intents. It's important. It is high value. We cannot lose teachers because they're not happy. We cannot, continually churn over board members because there's dissent. And I will work hard to continue to build those bridges and repair and rebuild relationships because I value them. And so I hope that things become better. I would like to look to the future because we've learned from the past.
Thank you, Stephanie. Great. Question 8. If elected, hypothetically, if an employee of the school system came to you claiming to be bullied and felt they could not refer it to the superintendent, how would you handle the situation? Corey.
Of
course, the district has to deal with tricky situations, and I think, as we've been talking about, everyone needs to feel safe in their jobs. Everyone needs to feel like they have a recourse, and there's a policy, and I think by putting a policy in place, that there is a policy where people who don't feel like they can go through the normal chain of command have a way to deal with things. I think those things can also be reduced before they happen. And I think part of what the strategic plan does is also include a lot of development that teachers want and that administrators want to know how to deal with things and how to go through conflict resolution before. And I'm not afraid to say that there are times when we need to move things to mediation, and maybe it's something that needs to be dealt with outside of the school board itself. But I'm a big believer that if there's policies in place and there's a system that is fair and equitable, that people will be able to find recourse for their problems in the proper way. I don't know that the board is always the one that needs to wade into every small detail in a district, and I think that the board should be maybe above that, setting policy and looking for things. But I think the board should set good policy that allows for those things to be taken care of in an equitable and just way.
Thank you, Gordy. Stephanie?
The board's role is not of administration. The board's role is governance and policy and student achievement and fiscal responsibility. What in my experience, I believe that you redirect this person who is making the allegations back to the school district employee that is tasked with handling this. That is not dismissive. That is knowing your role as a board member. When the board begins to blur lines in human resources, the board gets itself into trouble because it's crossing its own role, and it doesn't effectively stay above the fray of administration. It should be directed back to administration. Administration has resources outside of the school to deal with things like this, but policies certainly help, and so that's why they're re-examined on a regular basis. But if the board crosses that line, it's not in the purview of the board. It's not part of the board's role.
Thank you, Stephanie. Question number 9. Just like many other districts, Hamilton Central is dealing with more and more student behavior problems every year. Aside from the strategic plan, in your opinion, what ways can Hamilton Central tackle this issue moving forward? Corey?
I do think in the strategic plan, we were all surprised to see data that showed that students felt that behavior affected their learning, and that there were times when that was an issue for the students. I think a lot of us hadn't seen that or known about that necessarily at that point. So I think that in addition to what the strategic plan does, which is call for more guidance, I think that we can look to involve the community in a lot of ways. Have a community. Again, I don't know that the board is the one that can do this. I think that we need to have, the board right now is looking for a superintendent. So finding a superintendent who knows how to engage the community in creative ways, and making sure that those students who are maybe not as well received, those who are kind of outside, those who might have difficulties at home, know that they have resources in this community. I think we're an open community. I think we have a lot of resources and a lot of people who want to help, not just parents of this school, but other people who are willing to help out in this school in so many ways. And I think if we have a superintendent who's creative, who can look for those things and has ideas about those, that would be great. I don't know that the board can make every single decision in that regard, but we certainly are tasked with finding a new superintendent at this point, and I hope that's what the superintendent will be able to do.
Thank you, Corey. Stephanie?
I would just add, as part of the secondary steering committee, where I'm a member of the committee, one of the things that we're working on is the absenteeism rate here at Hamilton Central. It is remarkably high for a district our size, and those are barriers to kids coming to school where it's safe, where they can be happy, and where they have resources and we can help them. If they're not here at school, we lose them because they're not here. School is the best place for them. They've got it, we've got the resources set in place. I believe that the school is the hub of the community. It's usually the meeting place. It's usually the place where communities gather, such like this. You hold civic events. You hold all sorts of different activities, and making our school welcome is certainly going to help that. Again, addressing the culture and the morale by making this a happy place to come, and to try to break down some of those barriers to getting kids here might help. Again, these are building level issues. They're community issues. The board certainly has input on them and wants to hear about them. But it's sort of, it takes a village kind of thing. And so I'm certainly willing to be a part of any kind of initiative that makes a happier place, and kids who we currently lose sort of in the fray, allow them some opportunity to seek a different path. I'm happy to be involved in something like that.
Thank you, Stephanie. Question number 10. What are your plans for implementing the new Hamilton Central strategic plan, especially since we have an interim superintendent and will eventually have a new permanent leader who will need time to be brought up to speed? Lori?
As I said, I think this should be part of the interview process. The new superintendent candidates should be given a copy of the plan, and they should be asked to give their feedback on exactly what they would do to make sure this gets implemented effectively and efficiently. I also think a member of the board needs to be on the implementation team. It needs to be intimately involved, overseeing that process every aspect of the way. I know that we ask a lot of our board, and that there's a lot going on, but that's the unpaid job that we've signed up for.
Thank you, Craig. Stephanie?
I'm happy to report that it's begun. We don't have a permanent superintendent yet, but we have already had one meeting of our implementation team, and I'm proud to know that. They've come together. They've started to identify priorities, and I agree that the next superintendent needs to have experience in strategic planning process, not only at the process level, but at the implementation level, where they begin to develop the goals that they will measure, the metrics by which they will measure them with, and then just making sure that we're being financially responsible, that not every single initiative can get done. There's only so much on the money tree. And so prioritizing those initiatives is going to be really important, and I'm looking forward to the team. We've got a really, really good team in place, some of whom have worked on the process itself, some are new. So I think that we have fresh eyes, and we have people who have been intimately involved in the process that will be able to bring a superintendent who is experienced up to speed rather quickly. So I don't think we're going to lose any ground, and I'm proud to say that it's already begun.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, this concludes the questions. You were very efficiently answered. Thank you both. And now we'll get to the point of closing remarks. And I think what I'll do is give you each 3 minutes instead of 2 minutes, since we have some extra time. If you don't want to take it, that's fine, but you have 3 that are available. Corey.
Well, I'm kind of hungry, so I won't take 3 minutes. The reason I'm running for school board is because I think this community has so much to offer. And we have gotten ourselves into some situations that are hard to get out of. There is strife. There are people who think that there are members of this community who hate other members of this community. There are students who feel like they aren't sure why the school is headed in the direction it is. And I don't think that's the way this school should run, because there is so much in this community. We have so many people in this community, if you ask anything of them, they'll do it. If you want something from the people of this community, they will give their time. And we're not talking about people who are not busy. We're not just talking about parents. We're talking about people without children, whose children have gone on and have graduated from the school. We're talking about retirees who are willing to do and put in time for this school. Some people have asked me if they think that this is an attractive position for an incoming superintendent. And I think on paper, or maybe looking at our past, it might not be. But as somebody who moved to this community, driving here with my family, we didn't know where we were. We didn't know. We saw signs for Amish buggies, and we saw 1,000 deer. We were, where is this place? It's the middle of nowhere. But it is, I don't want to raise my family anywhere else. This is such a great community, and we have so much to offer. And I think anybody who has the chance to be a superintendent here has hit the jackpot. And we need to be able to communicate that. And I think the board can do a great job of communicating to the people in this district all the great things that we're doing, because so much is going on. And it's thanks to our teachers. It's thanks to our students who every day come in and put in the effort. And that's why I hope that the board can reflect that the board can be an example of the greatness that's happening here in our community already, that they can show and highlight all the great things our teachers are doing, all the amazing initiatives that they've gone and done themselves. Sometimes with little support, sometimes with very little financial support, they find the way to make this a great school. And I want to be the person who helps highlight that and shows it to the world. And I think this is a fantastic place, and I think that's why I hope that we can all be part of the board. And I know there's a lot of things that candidates say that can't also always get done, and that sometimes you come in, a lot of people have learned that campaigning is easy, but governing is harder. But I will make one campaign promise that I'll end on, that I guarantee, which is if I'm elected, I'll take down every sign that I put up.
Well, thank you, Corey. On that note, Stephanie.
Well said. I just want to thank David Crane for serving as the moderator. Again, he's sort of a great face for community service here in Hamilton, and I applaud him for putting himself out here again. Yeah, good. In my time on the board, I've served with 3 superintendents. I've worked collaboratively and successfully with 8 other board members and 9 different administrators. An average of 10 plus weeks, some more, some less. Each week of preparation and learning continues to reinforce to me that the time is well spent because the work is so important. It's inspiring, but it is not easy. I've been encouraged and supported to run for re-election by people I know personally and by those I don't, because I believe that they know that I've acted with honesty and integrity and attention to detail and a dedication to our district while trying to serve this past year as president in an extremely unstable and volatile time. I'm a volunteer, but I'm guided with a sense of public service, civic duty, and moral conviction. I've tried to do my best for what is right. The board carries the heavy burden of knowing that at the end of every issue, a student is impacted. And this is what stays at the top of my mind and keeps me up at night and will continue to keep me involved. No person in their right mind subjects themselves to this kind of exposure. As you've said, it's a thankless job, and it's someone once told me it's the ultimate volunteer job. Is it the right thing for me? Yes. If you serve 20% of the Board of Education, you're going to face complex issues that will test your strength and require the right approach. I've tried to be open and transparent. When I didn't know, I've sought guidance and will continue to do so. I have no preconceived agenda, no platform. I have no groups I am beholden to. If you have a vested interest in our school as a student, faculty, staff, parent, or taxpayer, or all of the above, you are my constituent. I am running for my community. I am running for my kids and your kids. I'm running to make sure our district is sustainable and poised for growth. And my purpose is to leave the district in a better place than I found it. And I encourage you and would welcome your support on May 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I want to thank both Corey and Stephanie for stepping forward and volunteering their time and energies for public service. We know that that's not an easy job, but we do appreciate when people in the community come forth and take time to do that. I'm sure that Corey and Stephanie will be available afterwards if you have individual questions you'd like to ask. All I would just like to leave with is that be sure you vote May 15th, 2018, 12 noon to 8 p.m. at the Hamilton School Bus Garage. The budget will be voted upon as well as the candidates for the board. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate your participation in this process.
Thank you.